You're listening to English with Monty, the podcast about the English language. Today we're talking about commonly confused words in English. Hello there and welcome to English with Monty. We're on to episode 27. We had a wonderful time, didn't we, Gideon? Gideon's on the show. He came over to London. How are you doing, Gideon?
Fine. I feel reinvigorated and fresh and new, having spent a few days in London. It's nice.
Yeah, it was lovely, wasn't it? We did a few things together. We did a couple of videos, didn't we, about the Brummie accent, because I'm from up that way. I think they were pretty awesome.
They were great. You should definitely check them out if you haven't already.
They'll be coming up soon, won't they? Or they're probably just released, depending on when you're listening to this podcast.
Exactly. It was great. Yeah. Really interesting to find out about the accent from Birmingham and to do the video with you. That was really interesting. I learned a lot, actually. Hope you will too.
Indeed. And it was a pleasure, wasn't it? It's been some time since we've actually seen each other face to face.
First time we've done a video face to face in the same room for many years.
This is true. Probably for 7 or 8 years, isn't it?
Thought I should do this Brummie accent on my own in the beginning, but it was terrible. I'm from London. I can't do a Brummie accent. So I'm glad you were there to help that out.
To do something only slightly better. But also, I think you're improving. In a few years, you'll be amazing.
Well, I thank you, John. That's my attempt at the Brummie accent.
Lovely. That was really good. Today, we're going to talk about commonly confused words in English.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought you were the best man to have on the show. Because you're good at acting a bit confused as well as knowing lots of stuff. Maybe, I think this is a good starting point to kick off with, is affect and effect. Affect with an A and effect with an E.
Mm-hmm.
How are they different? I mean, that's a really common mistake, isn't it? By native speakers as well as people learning English.
I should say, when I was a kid at school, this used to traumatize me.
Traumatize you?
I exaggerate a bit, but I always got that wrong. I think in English we get it wrong because the pronunciation is the same. I think if you're a non-native speaker, maybe you see it and you might, in your mind at least, see it as being pronounced differently. Affect. We say effect for both, don't we?
But you can
usually
say affect or effect, can't you?
Yeah, probably you can. So what's the effect of this? It could be the schwa sound, often used for both.
That's very true. Yeah, there's a in-between pronunciation, isn't it, between the A and the E?
I'll tell you a trick for remembering the difference, because effect with an E is the noun, isn't it? The effect. What's the effect? Affect, the verb. And the way I used to remember at school was, as effect is a noun, nouns have the before it sometimes, and the finishes with an E, and effect begins with an E. Does that make sense? Yeah. The effect.
That does help, doesn't it?
It helped me, but maybe not the other people.
It helps you not go to therapy sessions, right?
Yeah, it's something like that, yeah. The effect of doing this podcast is to make me want to sing with joy.
Well, everybody who comes on the podcast wants to do that. You're not the only one.
I was affected by your harsh words about my Brummie accent.
Were you? Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll help pay for the therapy sessions if you want.
Okay, thank you.
I think that was a good starting point. I hope that's clear for everybody. I think you really helped everybody with your little childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem to have a lot of childhood traumas, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Move on to compliment or compliment. I think that's another confused one, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It sounds like I've said the same word. You wouldn't pronounce it differently, would you? They're just spelt differently.
I think a lot of these cases, same pronunciation, say compliment. You could say, could you compliment, pay me a compliment. But I think it would just a longish word that it will get reduced to a schwa, compliment.
Indeed, because you've got E in the middle, haven't you? So C-O-M-P-L-E. And then ment, and then the other way of spelling it is C-O-M-P-L-I-M-E-N-T. So what's the difference?
Compliment with an I is to say something nice.
You're amazing. Your Brummie accent is awesome.
Thank you. And if this helps, the word nice contains an I in it. Nice.
Also
nice compliment.
An E, but yes.
No, but there's no I in complement, which is the other word.
That's true.
See what I mean?
Another good way of remembering it.
He paid me a nice compliment. All compliments are nice. Not a very elegant sentence. But,
no, you could have thought of a better one.
I don't want your compliments. Get out.
Compliment you so often that you get frustrated.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, with an E, it would be something that goes with something else, wouldn't it? They often use it in food, don't they? They say the starter complements the main course.
Yeah.
They work well together.
Exactly. And with the wine too, which wine would complement this chicken jalfrezi best?
I think that's probably the best way of using it, isn't it? And the most commonly used way.
Yes.
Just with the chicken jalfrezi, though. Well, this isn't about, I suppose it is about spelling, but it's also very different in meaning. Emigrate and immigrate. There's definitely a different pronunciation there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between emigrate and immigrate? Because also as well, I think the other interesting thing about that, and it's possibly a spelling issue, is that emigrate only has one M, whereas immigrate has two M's.
Oh, I see.
That's probably another thing that people should look out for.
I never got confused by this.
Did you not?
No. Emigrate, you move away. I'm going to emigrate. Here's another one, another trick to help you remember. Immigrate is like in, has an I in it because you come into the country. And emigrate, you go out, but immigrants come in. There are lots of immigrants, not immigrants, coming into the country.
Because if you're saying emigrate, it's like external almost. You could say, I externally go, maybe.
All my family have emigrated. They've all left this country. My grandparents were immigrants. They came into the country.
Mm-hmm. It's probably not too tricky, that one, is it? But I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, you did mention it.
So
it better be worth it.
It better be worth it. It's going to get us lots of listeners. I think this one is the next one on the list is about, I should probably point out that we're looking at Grammarly.com. They've got a number of different phrases get confused. I don't know about you, but I often have students who turn around to me and say, what does EG mean? And what does IE mean?
Right. Well, EG is, for example, it's Latin, isn't it?
It is Latin, yeah.
Exemplar gratis. I should know this, but I can't remember. Do you know what it is in Latin?
What you said is fine. I can't remember.
Exempli gratia.
Something like that. Because I always find it curious. It's obviously Latin, as you say, but in Italian, they don't use EG. And they always get confused what it is.
Don't use it in French, you wouldn't say EG. But it's strange that you use in conversation in English, don't you? For example, there are a lot of immigrants in my family, e.g. my great uncle.
So you wouldn't use it in spoken English, really, would you? It's just written.
No. I think some people do.
Do they?
Yeah, I've heard it. And they're often told not to. Try not to use that in spoken English. You know, you read these when you're trying to be more accessible when you're speaking. Because some people can say, why are you speaking in acronyms and in letters? Why don't you just use words like, for example? Which is a good point, really.
The circles that you mix in probably means that you encounter people like that. Sounds like a highbrow thing. I don't have friends that say that.
Try not to do it myself. I wouldn't do it myself. I'll just say, for example. Okay. Why should I say a Latin acronym? Why can't I just say what it is in common English? Makes more sense to me.
In my mind, I think you sound a little bit posh and academic if you say something like that, don't you?
Maybe, but you want to be understood. I don't know, maybe I don't want to be the conversation police, but you shouldn't overdo it. Just don't use too many acronyms all the time. In written English, if you're taking shortcuts, you're making notes like e.g. instead of for example, which is a very long thing to write, but I'd avoid it most of the time.
I.e., I think a lot of the time this isn't used correctly, is it? I.e.
That is.
Exactly. That's what it means, really, isn't it?
The murderer in my family, i.e. my great uncle, is now in prison. That's what it means, isn't it? Again, it's Latin.
You can see why it gets confused with EG, though, can't you?
No, not really.
No.
It's a different thing. That's why you just avoid the letters and just say the words. Id est, it stands for.
Id est. Again, it's Latin, right?
Yeah, Latin. I try and avoid it most of the time. I've never used it. I'm sure I have. But
I do find it quite useful to use.
E.g. is an example, and i.e. means that is the one. Not an example. This is the one.
Exact, isn't it? It's much more exact.
Yeah.
I find this one pretty common as well. Loose or lose. And I think it's more about people thinking that loose is pronounced lose and then thinking that word actually is lose when it's not.
Exactly.
So loose would be Loose, and loose would be, for example, you have a loose fitting t-shirt, as in it's not tight.
My trousers fell down because I wasn't wearing a belt and they were very loose.
And then obviously lose is the opposite of win, but it doesn't have a double O. That is important for people to think about. And the pronunciation is very different as well, isn't it?
You would think it's the opposite in a way. Lose has a long vowel sound, lose, and it's only got one vowel, well, one O. And loose has shorter vowel sound, and it's got two O's. Strange, isn't it?
It is
Should be the other way around. I think that's why people confuse it.
I think you're right. And then obviously lose has like a Z sound, doesn't it, at the end? And loose obviously has an S sound.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit confusing as well. I think you're correct. It is a lot about the vowel sound, isn't it? People don't expect that.
If you get this wrong, you're going to lose your mind. 1-0.
Were there any ones you wanted to pick out? I'm hogging everything.
There's one I disagree with. I was reading this list, and one I kind of disagree with a little bit. And that's among and amongst. And they haven't put while and whilst there either, but that could be added. It's not on the list. And it says here that they're both the same, which is true. And amongst is more common in British English, although I think more people use among. But I think the only reason to use amongst is for the sound. If it's followed by a vowel, sometimes it sounds nicer. Amongst all the people I know, amongst sort of links well. I think sometimes we choose words when there are two words which mean exactly the same thing. We just choose it because it just sounds better in the context. Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that's it. It creates a bit of a link, doesn't it? So you're saying amongst all.
Yes, you've got this vowel consonant, vowel consonant. I know G is a consonant, but the T is a stronger one. And same with while and whilst. While I was here, whilst I was here. While is a much more common word. I accept that. But if you're going to say whilst, it's going to be before a vowel.
But there's no difference between while and whilst.
Most of the time you'd say while, but there's no reason not to put whilst. It's just much less common. But same with among and amongst. I think most people, including myself, will say among most of the time, but just change it a little bit from time to time and put amongst. Nothing wrong with it.
It's kind of about writing, isn't it? I mean, as you say, with the vowel, it helps and it's just nicer to the ear, a bit more creative, maybe.
I can't think of any other reason why we need two words which mean exactly the same thing.
No. I suppose it's probably just come from literary circles, has it? That's why they exist.
I'm guessing it used to be amongst, and then people just started dropping the ST. The long word, people tend to shorten words. Probably came about that way.
If you would like to hear more of Gideon's lovely voice on his own podcast about curious and interesting things about the English language, it's Zeitgeist Banana. Just search for Zeitgeist Banana where you get your podcasts. You will find some wonderful and interesting stories with more of me, too.
The other one I bring up, which is probably more useful to know the difference, is in this list, farther and further. Grammar have got it wrong, I think.
Have they? I didn't know that there was a huge difference. Correct me if I'm wrong, you probably will do, but as far as I knew, you could say farther or further. So I could say, for example, your house is further away than mine, or your house is farther away from mine.
That's what grammar have got wrong, because there's a difference in British and American English. And in British English, you can always use further. Always use further. You can use it for distance. In grammar, it says you can't use it for distance. Yes, you can in British English. You live further away than I do. In American English, you'd probably say farther away. That's perfectly correct in British English. But in both styles of English, British, American, and other parts of the world, if you're talking not literally, you have to use further, like further to my email of the 25th.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I'd like some further information.
Yeah, you can't say father in that context.
You can't say father in that context.
So it's really about distance, isn't it? Because I guess that's the thing, isn't it? You with father with an A, it's obviously you're incorporating the word far.
Yeah, I say in British English, you don't really say father. You don't. There you are. Don't trust Grammarly all the time. That's wrong.
That's a good advertisement.
That's wrong. Don't trust Jon and Gideon.
They sponsor my channel.
Yeah, they've got it wrong here.
Or they never will sponsor my channel now. Can you say the furthest and the farthest? Do they exist as superlatives?
The same, yeah, be the same distinction.
Okay.
In British English, you wouldn't really say farthest. I mean, it's correct. You say the furthest. You live quite far, but Bob lives the furthest away from all of us.
But I think that was a good one to touch upon. I think both of your ones were very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think I touched upon this with Nicola in the 8-minute episode, which is probably coming out shortly, or it's the next episode on, depending on what I decide to do. I think we mentioned this. It was there, and there.
Yeah.
We've got 3 different theirs, haven't we? They're all pronounced the same. We use them in different contexts, don't we? That's confusing, isn't it?
It is confusing. I must say, I know the difference, of course. When you're writing quickly, sometimes you're not thinking, and sometimes you write the wrong one, even though you know the difference. Same with your and your. You're just like typing quickly. I've been guilty. People say, you don't know your basic grammar. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I just was.
Your students say to you.
Yeah, exactly. So that was just a type.
So what is the difference? How do you use them?
THEIR, that's possessive, isn't it?
It is possessive.
This is their house. It belongs to them. And there is over there, about a place, the opposite of here. And here ends ERE, and it's a place. So there also ends ERE. And there means they are. There's a contraction of they are. They're going to be late. They are going to be late.
Because you've got the obviously apostrophe RE there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Which obviously helps you understand that it's 2 words bolted together.
Sure.
I like your thing with here and there. I'd never really thought about that. It helps with spelling, doesn't it? Because obviously you've got here, which is contained in there in terms of the spelling, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is going a bit too far. See what you say about this, but THEIR, possession, you've got I there. It's all about, it's I.
Ah, yeah. Anything that helps you remember.
Yeah.
Little tricks helps you remember the difference.
I think often we just really get it wrong, as you say, with your and your, just because of our spell checker just corrects it wrongly, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah.
I often find myself having to recheck that just to make sure I don't do it wrongly.
This one on this list is another one. It gives me trauma. Still to this day, this is the only one. I think I mentioned it in the podcast I did as well, because I've sort of overcome my spelling traumas now. I think it's the same with every British kid because the English spelling is so erratic.
Cost you a few £1,000s in therapy fees.
I think so. But the one I still to this day, and I'm looking for a trick, maybe you can think of one to remember the difference. To this day, I still hesitate is stationary and stationary. Ooh. One with an A and one with an E. So stationary means it doesn't move. Stationary.
Yeah, the same pronunciation, right?
It is the same pronunciation. Stationary. Stationary. No one would say stationary, would you? Stationary. No, I don't think so. Not when you're speaking fluently.
We don't. Stationary with an A is saying something is not moving. I am stationary at the moment because I'm just sitting in front of the microphone. And I've got lots of stationery on my desk. I have pens and pencils.
Oh, lucky you. If you can't think of a trick to remember the difference, maybe one of your listeners can.
Yeah, maybe you can. You can come up with that.
Leave a comment or write John a long message. How can I remember the difference?
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm trying to work on it now. It's like every day I write with a pen, okay? And every has an E and stationary has an E in it. That's not very good. It's not very good. But I'm just thinking off the top of my head.
It's not bad because also you have pen and pencil, don't you? They both have an E.
Oh, yeah, that's true. No, we're getting somewhere now. Every pen I write, stationary. It's got lots of E's in it.
There we go. Write has an E, note has an E, pen, pencil, they have an E.
Yeah.
So don't write in. We've already solved it.
No, I want to hear their opinions. There might be a better way.
That's a good point. We're not the perfect answer. I was going to look at principal and principal. I guess, again, they would be pronounced the same, right? So principal with an AL at the end, or a principal with an LE. I often get these confused, I have to admit.
Oh, really? Wow, confession from John. I thought it was only me that had these spelling traumas.
No, sometimes I have meltdowns.
Really?
Yeah. I still have to spend thousands of pounds on therapy with this one because I'm in denial, I think. But principal with the AL, telling me here it can be a noun or an adjective as well.
I thought it was a noun. I thought it was a person, a principal.
Why is it saying it's an adjective? Oh, okay. So it's saying Posey was called into the principal's office.
Well, still a noun, though.
That's true.
Principal reason. Oh, yes, of course.
The principal reason. Yeah, the principal reason for this meeting is to brainstorm. Okay.
The grammar is right at this point.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the second one. Often I just say head teacher because it's easier. We don't normally say principal, do we, in English as a head teacher? Probably more of an American thing, isn't it, really? Principal with the LE?
That's a noun, yes. A firmly held belief. You stick to your principles.
Do you have any principles?
You should make sure that your spelling is correct for sending in your CV.
That is a very good principle. We spoke about that in our last episode, didn't we, about getting a job. That is a good principle. You need to spell things correctly in your CV. Especially
your own name. Your name's John, don't spell it B-O-B.
Or with a H. I've had people often spell it with a H, which is fair
enough. That's understandable.
Sometimes they spell it J-H-O-N, which I find curious.
H? You mean H?
H.
Okay.
The one that I was going to talk about last, I'm interested to know what your viewpoint is on this, whether you agree with Grammarly, but learned with an ED at the end and learnt with a T. And it's true to say you can do this with dreamed and dreamt, can't you, as well? But I think that's the only other verb you can do that with, isn't it?
Good point. Of the common verbs, I think so.
Yeah.
Dreamed, dreamt, learned, learnt, spoiled, spoilt.
Is learned with an ED standard in American English, and learnt with the T is standard in British English?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's correct. Learned is more common. Doesn't mean it's incorrect. I mean, British English, we usually say learnt, but you might hear people saying learned. I say learned is more common. Dreamt as well. Dreamed seems a bit strange to me to say dreamed.
It does to me as well. Yeah, dreamt sounds a lot better, doesn't it?
Yeah, but if someone said it, you'd think, oh, you dream.
So I didn't realize there was the difference between American English and British English. That's curious. I mean, most of the time I would teach that to students and say there's no real difference. And I guess
there isn't. I mean, especially if you're learning English, you don't have to choose the more British version or the more American version. You can choose whatever you want, can't you? Both are correct.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose in a way you would have to try to be consistent. That's probably fair to say, isn't it?
No, why?
No? Okay, you can mix and match.
I dreamt I lent you a car. So maybe you want to do it for the rhyme or something? Maybe just for the sound in the sentence?
Say, for example, I said I learned about the color pink and I spelled color.
No, because that's American English. Color, C-O-L-O-R is American English. You'd never write that in British English.
So I can't mix and match. That's what I'm saying. You have to be consistent.
No, but there are two. I can refer you to a Wikipedia page as well. You can see there are some words that 100% is British, 100% is American. Okay. And there are some words where there is a tendency, one version is more common in British English, one version is more common in American English. I give you the word lift and elevator. It's not quite 100% because you usually say lift in British English, but sometimes you want a synonym. If you're writing an article about lifts, you don't want to say lift, lift, lift all the time. So you might use the word elevator as well. So it's definitely much more common to say lift in British English, but it's not unheard of to use the elevator.
Yeah, sure. And then with spelling, it's probably because like recognize with an S or recognize with a Z, we use that interchangeably, don't we?
The Z versions of words are becoming more common in British English. Used to be more, S used to be more common, but that changes over time. Things also change over time. I would say with Z now.
Probably. The original version is S, isn't it, in British English? But that's something that's become acceptable, hasn't it?
I think it's becoming sort of standardized. So it's good to have kind of a standard, then you know where you stand. The ZE versions are taking off.
The moral of the story is that you can't spell color differently in British.
No, if you spell color or gray, Gray, that's American spelling. There are some cases where, both are acceptable, but the cases, no, this is just different.
So you have to be careful with a few things, like favorite as well would be another one.
Yeah, and I said with vocabulary, I said lift and elevator, where you'd usually say lift, but elevator could be okay in certain circumstances. But other words, no, we'd always say the tab, not the faucet.
That's true.
I can't think of any case where I would say switch on the faucet. No, that would be like 100% American.
Yeah, that sounds weird.
Yeah, or diapers instead of nappies or whatever. The case is a bit more, cookies. We usually say biscuits, but that's sort of big chunky biscuits. You might call it a cookie. Not always black and white, the cookies as well.
This is true, yes. Usually have chocolate chip in them.
Or just give me one more example, truck as well. Most of the time we'd say lorry, but you might say truck sometimes.
That's true. People who just have to be on their toes, don't they, for this one? They just have to be a little bit careful.
Exactly. There's a Wikipedia page which has all the statistics about what percentage of the British would say this word and what percentage of the Americans would say the word.
I'll check it out. Thanks for joining me, Gideon. I think we'll finish things off there.
Okay.
I've had enough. I've got to go for a lie down now. I think my brain is fried.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about what you do?
Yes. Two things briefly. I have a YouTube channel called Let Them Talk TV. We have lots of videos about grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. And also, I have a podcast called Zeitgeist Banana, and Jon is a regular guest on that. You can check that out too. In fact, Jon will be on the YouTube channel too, talking about the Brummie accent. You should see that video. That's
coming up. I think everybody's excited by that.
Yeah. Oh, it's already there if you're listening in the future.
Thank you very much for joining me, Gideon.
My pleasure, as always.
It's been amazing. You've been listening to English with Monty. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave me a donation online via our website. Monty is a small independent company and I do all the editing myself. I would suggest £2.50 to buy me a coffee or £5 for a beer. montyenglish.co.uk. Then just click on the podcast button at the top. You can donate here. Thank you. I appreciate it.